Before 2000 AD, rewrote sci-fi, Battle Picture Weekly shattered the propaganda-heavy mold of British war comics. Launched in 1975 by Pat Mills and John Wagner, Battle brought grit, realism, and anti-hero elements to the trenches, giving us masterpieces like Charlie's War and Johnny Red. Today on London Calling, we're looking at Battle. If you grew up in the UK or collected imports, you know that British comics in the 1970s didn't look like American superhero ones. They weren't clean, they weren't bright, and they didn't care about the Comics Code Authority. But before 2000 AD gave us Judge Dredd, a different weekly anthology completely rewrote the rules of British pop culture by bringing the mud, blood, and cynicism of real warfare straight to the newsagents. By 1975, the traditional British war comic was long past its sell-by date. D.C. Thompson launched Warlord in 1974, showing that there was some life still in the genre, but they hadn't quite moved into the modern era as much as they could have. Titles were popular, but often recycled. The same old safe, clean-cut heroes beating cartoonish villains tropes left over from World War II propaganda. Remember, this wasn't that far removed, 30 years since the war ended, and with the long reclamation right into the 60s, a lot of tough times for a lot of European countries, and the UK was no exception, having suffered greatly during World War II and taken quite some time to get back into shape. And then the 1970s hit with oil shortages, social unrest, and a lot of different factors leading to the kind of chaotic, unsure energy in the era. So it was perfect timing for two young, hungry creators who would change the industry forever to arrive on the scene, and this was Pat Mills and John Wagner. IPC magazines tasked them with creating a rival war title to take advantage of the newfound popularity and the new energy that Warlord brought into that space. Mills and Wagner had a distinct philosophy. Let's make it real. They basically wandered into a department full of stuffy old men smoking pipes, playing it safe, not having changed anything basically since the 1950s or 60s. Some very nice art, some great craftsmen, but very little creation, energy, or anything reflecting the modern day landscape of 1975. Mills and Wagner wanted to make it feel like the grit of 1970s cinema. They wanted working class heroes, anti-establishment soldiers, and flawed human beings trapped in horrific situations. They gave us Johnny Red, the disgraced RAF pilot fighting alongside a Soviet fighter squadron. They gave us Major Easy, a cynical cigar-chomping officer, modeled explicitly on James Coburn, who cared far more about keeping his men alive than serving high command. Battle was an instant hit because it spoke to kids who knew the world wasn't as black and white as what they'd previously been getting. But whilst Battle was pushing boundaries, its sister title, Action, masterminded by Pat Mills, was actively burning them down. Where Battle was the niche for wartime stories and exploration of people in combat, Action was a more wide-ranging, modern-day, generally, with a couple of futuristic strips. But for the most part, Action could be characters taking place in the streets of London. Action was a beautiful, chaotic nightmare. It featured hyper-violence, social commentary, and strips directly ripped from the headlines and exploitation cinema of the era. We're talking about Hookjaw, a blatant, ultra-gory take on Jaws, and Kids Rule OK, which featured teenage gangs ruling a dystopian London. The British media and moral guardians completely lost their minds. The comic was condemned in the House of Commons, wholesalers threatened boycotts, and IPC was forced to pull Action off the shelves, censor it heavily, and completely gut its attitude. But you can't keep a good piece of counterculture down for long. In November 1977, to quietly save what was left of the brand, IPC did what British publishers always did when a title was in trouble: the sudden emergency merger. Action was folded into Battle, creating Battle Action. So for anybody unfamiliar with this, it was the practice of, if one title had to be stopped, they didn't want to just lose all the intellectual properties and the following of readers that have been built up. So for continuity's sake, and to bring some of the readership, and because they would most likely have at least a month or so ahead of work already commissioned and paid for, some of it they could now move on to the new combined comics. So they would generally take the most popular strips and move them into the new comic, pushing the 2 or 3 least common or least popular strips out of that one, creating one potential powerhouse to make up for the sales lost by cancelling the one title and boost the new combined title in the process. While the raw, unadulterated violence of early Action was toned down, its cynical, rebellious, street-level DNA permanently infused itself into Battle. It became leaner, meaner, and completely unapologetic. And that brings us to 1979, the year Battle began publishing what is considered by many the greatest comic strip in the history of British sequential art, Charlie's War. Written by Pat Mills with breathtakingly detailed, haunting art by Joe Calhoun, Charlie's War tells the story of Charlie Byrne, an underage British kid who lies about his age to enlist in the trenches of World War I. On a personal note, my grandfather did the same thing, so I can attest to the reality of that. 16 years old, he lied about his age, forged a parent's signature, and signed up for the British Army and fought in Europe, was muster gas at the Battle of the Somme, and was discharged with an honourable discharge and received a British Army pension for the rest of his life. This wasn't an adventure story. It was a meticulous, deeply researched, and harrowing look at the sheer psychological horror of the Great War. It dealt with shell shock, incompetent upper-class generals treating working-class boys like cattle, gas attacks, and the devastating loss of innocence. Calhoun's art captured the suffocating claustrophobia of the mud and trenches in a way that hasn't been matched since. As the 80s progressed, the weekly anthology market in the UK slowly dried up. Battle finally closed its doors in 1988, seemingly relegated to the history books or nostalgic back issue bins. But fast forward to the 21st century, and Rebellion Publishing, the outfit that bought 2000 AD and rescued the massive IPC/Fleetway archive, decided that these classic characters deserved a second life. And they found the perfect champion to lead the charge in Garth Ennis. Now, if you know Ennis from The Boys or Preacher, or indeed a lot of the UK work that he started on Crisis, and then did extensive work on 2000 AD, before shifting to the US with DC title Hellblazer to start off with, and then some Vertigo books like Preacher, and some other DC books like Hitman, and The Demon, before moving on to other work for Marvel, most famously The Punisher, and also the war stories that he's done with Image and a few different publishers, Avatar as well, Crossed, and a few things. You know, Garth has a legendary, borderline obsessive passion for classic war comics. He grew up on Battle. He practically learned how to write pacing and tension from studying these specific pages. Ennis didn't just want to reprint the old stories, he wanted to bring them roaring back for the modern age. Through a series of high-profile battle action specials and dedicated mini-series published by Rebellion, Ennis, along with an incredible roster of artists, stepped up to write new adventures for Johnny Red, the Kurtz, which is the German perspective strips, Crazy Keller, and Hellman of Hammer Force. What makes the Rebellion revival so special is that it doesn't sanitize the past. It honors the core spirit of the original creators. It keeps that sharp anti-authority, deeply human perspective on the realities of combat, whilst also utilizing modern storytelling sensibilities. Battle Picture Weekly proved that comics about war could be anti-war. It proved that you could respect the soldiers while completely questioning the machine that sent them there. From Pat Mills and John Wagner in 1975 to Garth Ennis and Rebellion today, that legacy of uncompromising storytelling is still very much alive. But I want to hear from you guys. Did you grow up reading Battle or Action? What's your favorite strip? Are you a Johnny Red guy? Or is it Charlie's War that's your gold standard? Or if you grew up somewhere else, what were your war-related comics like in France, in Germany, in the US? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the history of the UK scene, hit that like button, share this video, and make sure you're subscribed to Ghost Train Comics. Check out the rest of our London Calling playlist for more histories of classic British weeklies. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and thanks for your time, and see you soon.